Hello and welcome to The Federal. This is Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we take a 360-degree look at a very important issue. Today we'll be talking about the impending consecration ceremony of the Ram Temple in Ayodhya, how it impacts Indian politics, both in terms of electoral politics, the immediate 2024 elections, and also how it affects society and long-term politics and political trends in India. I will be talking to one of the foremost scholars on the subject of Hindu nationalistic politics, that is Christophe Jaffrelot, who does not really require much introduction. We have spoken to him on this program a few months ago, but we felt that on this occasion, we could not talk to him. So good morning, because you are in the United States. And Christophe, so glad and thank you very much for joining on this program amid your very tight schedule.
Thank you for inviting me, Nilanjan.
It's always a great pleasure to speak with you and learn a lot all the time. Let's begin by the most obvious question. 22nd of January, what does the day symbolize for different types of Indians? What do you think is really happening?
Well, I think for the Muslim minority, it will definitely be a very sad day. Also more so as the mosque that was supposed to be also built is not to be seen anytime soon. But for the majority supporting this plan, this project, and it's not the case for each and every Hindu, but for those who support this enterprise, it is certainly a sentiment of triumph and revenge that will prevail, that is prevailing already. So we have probably never seen India so polarized. It's not a recent development, but it is a landmark in a trajectory that started in 1984, when the Ayodhya movement, when the Ram Janmabhoomi movement started.
You know, it has been 4 decades since the agitation started, and also nearly 4 decades since you have been writing and tracking, researching the rise and growth of Hindu nationalistic politics in India, about how it has impacted politics in the country. There have been various very important days in this entire 40 years, but possibly none more important prior to the 22nd of January now was the 6th of December 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished by a mob, which although the commitment was from the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and the entire Sangh Parivar that they will ensure, including the UP government. Let me point it out at this time for people who were not alive at that time and may not, even if they were, they may not remember the events of that particular time. How is the 22nd of January 2024 different from the 6th of December 1992, both in terms of people who are preparing to go to Ayodhya then and are doing so now, and also people who actually reached and participating in whatever was done then and what is going to be done now?
Well, the atmosphere, of course, is very different. But before contrasting the two events, let's see how similar they are.
Yes.
And the similarities come mostly from the fact that all this is pre-planned, all this is organized. You mentioned the mob that was there on the 6th of December 1992.
Right.
You know, the same way I don't buy the idea that there is something called mob lynching. I don't think a mob was responsible for what happened in 1992. It was a well-organized, well-oiled machinery. It was a completely pre-planned event. because the activists who did it were well trained for
They
months,
rehearse, there are
years.
photographs, and also people have confessed that the highest leaders in the RSS were aware as to what is going to happen.
Exactly. And they were there, many of them, celebrating the destruction of the demolition of the Babri Masjid when that happened. So that's where the similarity is. This chain of events fits in a plan, a long-term plan for transforming Ayodhya into, as some of them said, the new Rome or the new Mecca, the place where Hinduism will get some center. And you can't deny that there is a mimetic attitude, to emulate the religions they fear the most, Islam, Christianity. They try to invent a kind of new sacred central site for Hinduism. And 1992 was, in that sense, the first major step in this direction. And the 22nd of January will be somewhat the final, I would say, stage of this process. Now, of course, the atmosphere is very different. 1992, it was really revenge, hatred. Never forget that before 1992, there was 1990, the Rath Yatra, and the Rath Yatra culminated in some assault on the Babri Masjid. And at that time, Mulayam Singh Yadav was chief minister, and there was a repression, and dozens of car sevaks were killed. Then there was the Ashti Kalash Yatra for another procession. So the atmosphere was very much an atmosphere of uncertainty, battle, fight. We are in a completely different India. We are in a completely different India. They have won. They have triumphed. So now they can certainly change the repertoire. No, what is the repertoire? The repertoire that will dominate is Shanti. It will be, I would say, well, Shanti in the sense that you can certainly argue that the most lenient face of Hindutva is now bound to prevail. And it can be seen as an harmonious moment with a triumphant Hindutva movement at the helm. So the main figure will not be the car sevak anymore. The main figure was the car sevak in 1992. The main figure is Modi as the high priest of the Hindu Rashtra. And that's a completely different atmosphere. But of course, to be the high priest of Hinduism, when you're the prime minister of India, is very revealing of a shift towards a rather theocratic India, an India where the main leader, the main political leader, is also embodying spiritual authority. Something, of course, the real priests don't take very lightly.
Would you say that the presence of Mr. Modi on the 22nd of January and previously on the 5th of August 2020, when he performed the ground laying ceremony of the temple, even though the Shilanyas was first done on the 9th of November in 1989, despite that Mr. Modi putting his signature on a foundation laying ceremony, that erased all lines of separation which existed between religion and politics on one side and religion and the Indian state on the other side. Would you
Definitely.
say?
Definitely. We have changed the political order. When the main leader of the executive is not only inviting high priest to the Lok Sabha, to parliament for inaugurating a new building, but is also laying the stone of a temple like the Ram temple in Ayodhya, and now inaugurating the temple himself, we have entered a new political order, an order where Hinduism becomes a kind of official religion. De facto, of course, not in the constitution itself. They will not change the constitution of India. That's not the game. That's not the plan. But de facto, you have an Hindu Rashtra in the making in India today, and this is a very clear symbol of all that.
So if I try to ask you that in the course of these 40 years, we have seen very major changes in terms of impact on society among interpersonal relations, people between one community and another, position of various sections of society in terms of religious community and other caste identity is also very important. So would you say that Indian politics has completely changed forever, or would you say that forever is a word which you'd rather not use at this time? It has indeed changed at the moment where we are.
Yeah, you can never say forever, especially in politics. We don't know whether the point of no return has been reached. This Ram Janmabhoomi movement was a response, at least in 1990 with the Rath Yatra, to the Mandal moment. Now, there is a dialectic between caste politics and Hindutva politics.
Right.
Clearly, the 6th of December was chosen as the date because that was the date when Dr. Ambedkar died. Now, this dialectic between caste politics and Hindutva politics is so clear that caste politics can stage a comeback and may make things more difficult for the proponents of Hindutva politics. So that's one. But two, I would be very surprised if we could return to statu quo ante anytime soon. You know, even if the point of no return has not been reached, you can say that red lines have been made, and it will be very difficult to return to, for instance, the situation we knew regarding the status of Muslims on the political scene. You know, shall we ever say another Muslim president of the Indian Republic in our lifetime? Can we ever see the cow protection movement not becoming such a strong, red line again? In that sense, we can compare to what happened to Pakistan. You know, who in Pakistan after Zia was in a position to say the blasphemy law has to be reformed? Nobody can return to the statu quo ante on that front. So yes, point of no return, we don't know. Red lines, certainly, and it will certainly be very difficult for any Congress-led government to undo many of the things that have been done already for 10 years.
Okay. You know, I have a slightly personal question. You know, when, in terms of your academic pursuit, when you started getting interested, you know, in studying Hindu nationalistic politics and the organizations which are pursuing this kind of politics, you know, which is essentially towards the mid and the late 1980s and the early 90s, that period. At that point, did you ever envisage that this cluster of these organizations are going to establish such a powerful political hegemony over not just politics, but entire society and the thinking of a large section of Indians?
You know, Nilanjan, the last sentence of my last book, of my first book, sorry, I'm thinking about my last book now. The last sentence of my first book, sorry.
That is the one which came out in the mid-90s.
Yeah, 1996.
Yeah, 1990.
The last sentence said, of course, they are not in office. No, at that time, Vajpayee could not remain prime minister for more than a couple of weeks, but they are conquering society. They were conquering society, and nobody wanted to see that. Nobody among my liberal friends in Delhi wanted to see that. By the way, nobody was doing any field work. So I was doing field work in Madhya Pradesh. I was seeing the network of not only RSS, but Vishwa Hindu Parishad, Bajrang Dal, and there were also BMS and ABVP and BKS, you know, and nobody knew who were these people in Delhi, and nobody cared really. So yes, you could certainly anticipate that there would be a kind of societal transformation. And it took them almost 100 years, because RSS is now almost 100 years old, but they did it. And that's why it is so difficult to undo what has been achieved by them.
In fact, a little bit of a, on a personal note, when I started writing on the Ayodhya agitation as a reporter, young reporter at that time, and I began doggedly pursuing it, I finally decided that also I will try to write a book. And the book was fortunately published in January 94, which is exactly 30 years prior to that. At that time, my colleagues within the media and those who were also active in politics would say, Nilanjan, you spend too much of time with the people from the RSS and the BJP. Indians are inherently secular. This word rings very loudly in my ear, inherently secular.
Yeah.
Would you say that in hindsight, would you say that no, there was an inherently communal way of looking at it, only that it was not considered to be politically correct, which is why it was not articulated after India became independent? It was the Ram temple issue which gave the people the courage to say, yes, it is something they can state openly, that it is not politically incorrect, but is instead politically correct to say that this is the country of Hindus. Whoever stays here are welcome to stay, but they must live here on our terms and conditions. Would you say that
I don't
was there?
Yeah. I don't think there is anything inherent there. I think they really shifted the discourse. That's where they were and it took them quite a long time. Now, remember, they started this Ayodhya movement in 1984. It was very, very difficult in the beginning to mobilize people along these lines. Finally, after the 1989 series of riots, and riots played a big role in this polarization.
And the riots sparked by the processions carried out with those Jai Shri Ram bricks, specially inscribed on it in the Shila Yatra program.
The Ramshila movement,
yes,
in the fall of 1989 was probably the most important starting point. It was the real starting point, because 84 was a non-starter. So how do you make people communal? Because I really do not think they are inherently communal. You make them communal by designating the other as the enemy, and by engineering violence, making it necessary to protect yourself as a Hindu. You really you inoculate a feeling of vulnerability, a feeling of fear, a sense of fear. And that, of course, was reinforced by the series of Islamist attacks. The role of Islamist attacks in the late 90s, first one, 1999, in the Delhi Qila, the Lal Qila.
There were some attacks at that time.
There was a very important attack at that time. And then for 10 years, till Bombay 2008, a series of Islamist attack, of course, Parliament 2001. So it became possible to say we are besieged, we are under attack, we have to defend ourselves. So I really don't think it is inherently cultural. It's something that has been built, constructed as an ideology. But of course, once this has become an identity, to return to square one becomes very difficult.
To what extent was global developments, the attack on the Twin Towers in, how did it, and, the way it changed the global security concerns and the way of looking at it? Hutchinson's clash of civilizations theory, that all that surfaced in the late 1990s, as well as, through the years, 2000, 2001. Very important developments took place at that time. Did it impact the narrative, political narrative within India also?
Oh, definitely. I think also because of Afghanistan being not so far away, Pakistan, of course, being the neighbor. When you consider AfPak the way the US did as the main enemy, it cannot be without any consequence on India itself. So the discourse on Islam, on Islamism, but then on Islam, was certainly creating a context that helped them a lot. Islamophobia was the natural repertoire almost after 9/11. But of course, also what helped the Hindu forces was, if in the US, if in Europe, you have this impression that we need to build a coalition against Islamism, Muslims, well, India is part of it. India is naturally part of it. And you have to bring, of course, Israel in the picture, because at that time, in the 90s, we see this rapprochement between New Delhi and Tel Aviv, and that was part of the game. You know, we had a common enemy and we have to close ranks.
Let's look at it, that the temple consecration on the 22nd of January. Let's look at it in the ahead in the short term. We have elections to be announced sometime in the first half of March. They are going to be called, and Indians will be voting in all probability in various phases through the months of April and May, and by the end of May, we would have the verdict. What is your prognosis? What is your assessment of how the electoral narrative will flow from here? And what are the chances of Modi actually leading the BJP back for a record-matching third tenure?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. We have to connect the two. The inauguration of the temple is in fact launching the election campaign. This is now the main theme that will be articulated by the government, by Narendra Modi himself, a sense of triumph of Hindus arriving, the end of one important journey that will be repeated ad nauseum. Well, in response to that, of course, the opposition is doing something new. Unity. The coalition of 28 parties is unprecedented.
Okay.
How does that change the game remains to be seen. First of all, we need to see whether they will really have seat adjustments everywhere. Not easy. How can the CPI and the TMC be part of the same CPIM and TMC part of the same alliance in West Bengal? So number one, we have to see how far this is really a straight fight now. And secondly, BJP has so many tricks, resources. They can certainly nominate the dissidents. So yeah, the purely electoral tactic that we will see at work is not clear and will play a big role. Two, is the opposition in a position to shift the narrative? Will the Yatra Rahul Gandhi is starting make the same kind of impact he made when he was in his first Yatra? That is important, of course. And third, can they counter identity politics by returning to socio-economic issues? No, this is probably the main point. People are voting for BJP in spite of everything, in spite of joblessness, in spite of the rise of poverty, in spite of the rise of inequality, because they believe that they have to fall on the majoritarian identity side. Can that be affected? Well, when I say they, of course, you need to qualify that. BJP never won more than 37% of the votes. So it's not as if everybody was behind. And the South, of course, will not be fully behind BJP again. But it's not sufficient for dislodging BJP from power. And that's for me is the main, really the main issue. Can we have an election battle that brings socioeconomic questions on the forefront? Or is this completely submerged by identity politics, by religious feelings? Yeah.
For a country where people used to vote on the basis of their on the basis of their economic situation, on the basis of performance of governments, how do you explain people voting solely on the issue of identity and on the issue or the desire of seeking revenge on a imaginary other which has been created and projected by the BJP and its affiliates within the Sangh Parivar?
Well, you have a kind of hierarchy of priorities. If you look at the last surveys by CSDS about Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, after the state elections,
Yes.
the release surveys,
Yes.
yeah, great surveys, reconfirming that the main issue is not unemployment. The main issue is the Hindu Rashtra that you want to build. So it's very clear that Modi succeeded in doing what so many others have done, including Erdogan, including Orban, to relate to the voters, including the poor, by telling them, I'm protecting you against threats. In Hungary, it's or Turkey, it's migrants. In India, it's Muslims. Two, I am recognizing your sense of dignity. And we should really not underestimate the capacity of the populist to give a sense of dignity to the poor. Man Ki Baat is just about that. Every month, Narendra Modi speaks to the poor by telling them, I'm listening to you. I am with you. I am on your side. So this is irrational.
Suggestions from you. He keeps on seeking suggestions.
Exactly. This is the power of the populist who appears to be on the side of the poor, even though he doesn't do anything for the poor. So this disconnect, of course, for any policymaker is a puzzle. How can people fall in that trap? Well, they can easily when there is also a lack of education, when there is clearly a propaganda at work. This is why this competition is so uneven. India, well, in the last Indian elections, $7 billion were spent.
Right.
More than half by one party.
Yes.
You saturate the public sphere. And of course, TV channels are all on the same side. So the press coverage on the one hand, the public sphere at large, social media and so on the other hand, make the voice of the opposition also very difficult to hear.
One question on Modi, we are talking about him. People have been asking that how does the temple being constructed, what does it do to Modi's image? Does his stature get elevated, or what is going to happen to him in future?
Yeah, no, I think it's an achievement people will celebrate. And I don't think the Shankaracharya's descending voices will make any difference, really.
Okay.
I don't think people believe that this is Pakka Hinduism. They know that it's an ideology, it's identity politics. That's why he is unbeatable. He cannot be wrong. He cannot be wrong. So all the attempts at making his image dented, you remember, some people refer to the way he had abandoned his wife. Some people refer to so many personal issues he had. Nobody cares really, because they know that this is not the main point. The main point is he has protected us. He has made India great again, and that's an important point.
That's a subjective assessment. India may not be actually great, but they believe so.
Exactly. And TV helps. TV channels help a lot because they keep showing him well, traveling around the globe and meeting the greatest authorities in the world and the G20 meeting and so on and so forth. So it's not about Hinduism. It's more about the Hindu psyche, pride, you know. Gar se kaho hum Hindu hain.
Pride and
Yeah.
seeking revenge. Yes, you reminded. Garv se kaho hum Hindu hain. On
And
the
we are back. We are back to this.
in 1988. That is what gave the. Do you think, a quick question, do you think a similar kind of a narrative, what has happened in Ayodhya, happening in much quicker time in Varanasi, Mathura, and maybe several other places where there are claims by the Sangh Parivar that a mosque demolished a Hindu temple in the medieval years, centuries, and actually built mosques over it?
Well, they have to keep the pot boiling.
Okay.
So every resource of that kind is useful. This plus, of course, the anti-love jihad campaigns, the anti-conversion campaign, the cow protection campaign. Vigilantes will continue to be used for keeping the pot boiling. But after each and every election, some big decision has been made in the past. Remember 2014, that was the law for changing the way judges to the Supreme Court were appointed. 2019, it was the CAA, as well as the Jammu and Kashmir Article 370 abolition.
The divorce law for the Muslims, UAPA, making it more harsh. We can list many laws which have.
Exactly. So what will happen in 2024 it remains to be seen. Can they do the Uniform Civil Code? Then, of course, the three issues which had been on the back burner after
all have been delivered to the people.
Exactly. What else? But something will be certainly done.
One last question.
Yeah, please.
Modi is going to be 74 in September. I'm not talking about the 75-year-old retirement age, which has been put out for the biggest leaders. Such, retirement age never exists. But at some point, Modi will no longer be the leader of India. Would somebody else be able to take his position from within the same ideological framework? Or would there be then a severe churning in society, and then maybe the politics of Hindutva would be put on the back burner and a new kind of an ideology would emerge? Has Hindutva secured a position of permanence irrespective of an individual political leader? That is my question.
Well, a very difficult question, Nilanjan, because if we look at the previous episodes of a similar kind in India and elsewhere, it's very clear that to succeed a strong man or a strong woman has always been difficult. Maduro was not Chavez. It doesn't work like that. The populist is never succeeded with someone endowed with the same charisma. It's just impossible. Charisma is completely personal, idiosyncratic. So to succeed to the strong man has always been complicated. You have to find someone who will do something similar but different, to reinvent the repertoire that has been dominant for many years. I don't see anybody in a position to do it at the moment.
Okay.
It will be very difficult for those who are now number two, I would say numbers twos, to take over this mantle.
Are you talking about Mr. Amit Shah?
Amit Shah, Yogi Adityanath are not in a position to take over from Narendra Modi easily. And that opens a series of questions. One, will they fight each other? Two, if none of them is in a position to win, can they join hands? And if they cannot easily win elections, can election be further transformed into something even more different? And 3, what will RSS do in this context? For the moment, RSS has been sidelined to some extent. At least RSS leaders have been sidelined to some extent. They are waiting and watching and waiting. They have time. RSS is in no hurry. It has never been in a hurry. It's a millenarist kind of movement. But they may seize this opportunity for regain the initiative, bring someone back in the picture.
Again.
Exactly. They may have their own candidate and therefore, return to the forefront. This is why the India we have with Narendra Modi is different from Indira Gandhi's India, because there are many similarities between the two.
Yes.
But Indira Gandhi had no party, no organization of the magnitude of the strength of the Sangh Parivar.
Would you also say that she had no ideological commitment like Narendra Modi has?
Definitely. When we did our book on the emergency with Pratina Vanil, it was very clear that she was an autopilot. She was not having any long-term plan. It was damage control from day one. And this is a different government. This is a government that is driven by some ethno-religious ideology. Yeah. So not only the organization was different, very different, but also the ideology was very different. That's probably why the kind of Hinduization of politics we are seeing is bound to be resilient, because RSS can pursue this endeavor. But I repeat that in Hindutva and caste politics, so some socio-economic alternative is always there and can also be seen as preferable by a majority of Indian voters at one point.
So thank you very much. What you say is very clear, that there are a lot of uncertainties for India in the long-term future, but in the short term for the 2024 elections, Narendra Modi continues to be in the pole position. The consecration of the temple on the 22nd of January is strengthening his position all the more, but yet we cannot say the final word has been written, because the opposition parties are still trying to come together. Rahul Gandhi is on the second yatra, lots of things to keep track of. There will be plenty more developments, and Professor Jaffrelot, we will hope to come back and engage with you once again through this very, very turbulent period of Indian electoral and political history. It has always been a treat to read and speak you. All your books are here in this pile of it, and they remain my consent. I can just reach my arm, turn it around and just pick it out. I know that which is the one.
Nilanjan, there'll be one more next month. Gujarat under Narendra Modi.
I look forward to it, and we shall definitely have a discussion the moment I can get hold of that book in my hand. Thank you very much for coming and joining me once again on this program.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.